Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the last and final insight session of the 6 Weeks to Flexible Work and Life Success series. I am Cali Williams Yost, and this series has been part of a broader ongoing effort to bring leaders, managers, teams, and individuals together to reimagine work and life through this COVID pandemic and beyond. And today we're going to review and wrap up what we covered together over the last 6 weeks, as I hope you moved from the deep end of overwhelm to seeing the possibilities. But first, I want to introduce my producer, Lauren. Hey, Lauren.
Hello, everybody.
So again, this is our wrap up. We are reviewing what we covered because I want to show you how I hopefully structured this to move you from what was really a place of deep overwhelm to seeing the possibilities for your organization as we move through, and yourself, as we move through this pandemic and beyond. So what we're going to do is I'm going to talk about why. Why did I decide to do this series? There was some logic behind it that I think you will find interesting. And I want to go over what we covered. I want to show you the whole of the different topics and why I chose specific topics on specific weeks to cover and how it all built on one another. And finally, I want to talk about where we're going to go from here. I want to just review those next steps again. And then I do want to talk to all of you. So we are going to do a Q&A. Again, we're going to have everybody raise their hands. And I will unmute you and we will have a conversation. Well, the first thing I want to do is pose the question again to you that I posed the first session, because I want to see if there was movement. If you want to try to talk to me about this at the end live, great. I want to hear where your organization is or where you are. If you'd rather just chat your answer into the chat function, I'd love to hear it as well in there. But here's the question. Would you say that your organization, or even yourself, are you white knuckling it through this period? Are you still hoping that we're just going to go back to normal sooner rather than later? Or are you seriously considering where, when, and how work will need to be done differently? Do you see this as something that has to change? Or is it a little bit of both? Are you still kind of white knuckling it, thinking maybe we'll just go back and I won't have to make a lot of change? Or again, are you also at the same time seeing, yeah, probably we have to evolve in a certain way? Or are you just not sure still? And that's fine as well. So again, the 4 options are: we're still white knuckling it, thinking we're going to go back. 2 is we are really knowing we got to do things differently. 3 is it's a kind of a combo of both still. And 4 is I'm still not sure. So again, think about this for the next few minutes. Either chat your answer into the chat function to let me know where you are, where your organization is, or if you do want to raise your hand at the end and have a conversation, I'd love to hear as well, in addition to just answering any questions that you have. So where did all of this begin? It all began back in February, end of February, when the article I wrote for Harvard Business Review was published. And this article was really to sort of give a general outline of the basics of what I was calling an emergency remote work plan. At the time, COVID was on the horizon. Wasn't really sure it was even going to be anything, but I thought, you know what? Just in case, let's just put some basics out there so people can begin to think about it. Why I got a little concerned is how much sharing happened with this article and how grateful people were for it, which told me at the end of February that people really did not know what to do in terms of remote working in their organizations. And they were kind of surprised and mind blown by what I was saying, which made me realize, boy, they are far from what this reality is. I realized also that I am so in my lane with visionary leaders and visionary organizations that I work with that I kind of assumed people were further along, I guess, than they were. So I was concerned, and I thought, okay, so maybe this won't be anything and we'll have a lot more time to get organizations up to speed. And should anything like this happen again, they won't have this kind of shocked reaction to even these most basic steps related to remote work. Well, unfortunately, that did not happen. And just 2 weeks later, all of the very strict stay-at-home mandates started to go in place, and organizations had to be rapidly switching their operations over as much as possible to remote work. And this is where I decided to do the series. I saw people were being thrown into the deep end. They were being hit with all of this really well-intended advice from people who had worked remotely for 20 years. And this is how I find my quiet space, and I shut a door, and this is all the technology I use, and here are all the new platforms you should use. And I just thought, okay, this is just too much. I mean, people cannot even get on their VPN. They don't even know how to use their video cameras. I mean, okay. I have got to try to help people walk them through this in an organized way based on my 25 years of helping organizations do this. How can I put this into a format that can give people a little bit of strategy and intention, and maybe a little hope and inspiration that actually beyond this overwhelm lies a lot of potential. Not only will it get people through this difficult period as safely as possible, but there's a way that this can encourage transformation that actually can set everybody up for success on the other side. And, this is where I thought we were going to have this 6 weeks. And I should say the reason I chose 6 weeks is that 6 weeks is what we do for our pilots in companies. And I have found 6 weeks tends to be about enough time to move people from the discomfort phase to really beginning to get into a little bit of a groove and saying, okay, I understand, I kind of get this. And I actually thought the safe at home periods were going to last most of the 6 weeks. Well, what we have found obviously is we're moving pretty rapidly more into the next phase, which was also what my intention was to help you think about, okay, what could the next phase look like? How, when, and where could we be working as things begin to physically reopen and we have to start recalibrating? And also set you up to see that this is going to be for a while now. I mean, we're going to be in this kind of recalibration, evolving, flexible reality of work and life for the next few months, even years, if we can't get more organized around testing and tracing and treatment. We really are going to have to use flexibility in the way we work to continue to operate our organizations, get our jobs done, and manage our lives. Because what I really hope that you see now is I truly, truly believe that strategic high performance flexibility is going to be the outcome of all of this, where we will, as managers, teams, and individuals, really start to understand what it means to leverage remote work, flexible timing and scheduling, alternating A and B teams, redesigning workspaces both on and off site, and also leveraging technology in a way that is intentional, strategic, and coordinated. I do believe that this is what is on the other side of the overwhelm, and I hope that this series has begun to kind of walk you through how to get from the overwhelm to seeing this and beginning to take action. So, how did I structure this series? It was very intentional, and if you go back to week 1, the first thing we did was provide some context as to why this was overwhelming. What was causing this to be so sort of disorienting and difficult? And the reason it is because everybody was thrown into pilot. And I wanted everybody to know it was nothing wrong with them, is that in an organized way, you would have been prepared for this. You weren't. So it was going to be hard. And also there were some 7 truths about work and life we had to face really quickly, which we've been kind of ignoring for all these years, which is there really is no boundary between work and the other parts of life. We've sort of been pretending that it's there, and it hasn't been, and now really it wasn't. And so what did that mean for us as individuals as we tried to fit our work and life together and manage our priorities? And what did it mean for our organizations having to recognize that and make that part of the strategic consideration for how we were going to work and run the business? And so then with the context in mind, we need a roadmap. And so I put some principles in place for reimagining work and life in crisis. And it really did start with keeping it simple and starting with where you were. I wanted people to understand all that great advice from all those people had been remote working forever, and managers who were leading distributed teams forever, and all the technology that was coming at you. That is fine, but not yet. You needed to just begin where you were, and you needed to be all about intention and not perfection. And then you just needed to keep leveraging the learning and communicating and recalibrating. And so that's what we set up in week 1. But then in week 2, you needed to begin to take action, right? The overwhelm was keeping people stuck. So how could you move forward? And that's why I asked my friend Whitney Johnson to start us off with her S-curve of learning to help us understand we were on a new S-curve of learning, which is why it all felt so overwhelming. But if you looked at that S-curve, you knew that if you stuck with it and you kept trying different things, you would slowly move up again and feel more of a sense of mastery. We talked about that model of shared leadership, that organizations, managers, and teams and individuals were really going to work together to manage that performance, empathy, and trust that were so critical in this difficult time. But then also for us as individuals, looking at how we put those boundaries up, what that intention looks like. And we started to talk about the quarantine daily routine and the secrets of the work-life fit natural. So this was our framework for action that then took us into week 3, because see, action is fine, but you can only take action effectively if you shift your mindset. So now with an idea of how to take action, how could you start to think differently about work and your life? And it began with the 2 mindset shifts of work's a what? It's not a where. And how can you then move up and down that continuum of high performance flexibility to the small shifts that make a lot of difference, but then also looking at this, what was a huge reset in how we are working and managing life, and looking at work as a what you were trying to do along that continuum, and how, when, and where do you do it best. And the fact that it's not fair in terms of it's all going to be one size fits all for everybody. It's really going to be dependent on your job, on your industry, on what's going on in your personal work reality and in your life. And again, finding your spot along that continuum in a way that is consistent. So the process is fair, but the outcome is going to be based upon your unique realities that are always changing. And then finally, the mindset shift was, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And how is we as individuals following that intentional work-life fit, thinking through our priorities, how can we really think about building that foundation of physical, mental, and emotional well-being that we're going to need to take us through what's a very difficult time, but also a time that's going to be, it's going to be with us for a while. So how do we have the mindset that we need to build that foundation and then take action to make it happen? So then in week 4, you sort of got your bearings, right? And then it's time to, how do you start to level up? Then you're maybe ready to hear from somebody who has managed a distributed team for years. What do they do? How do they use technology? What does that look like? Because you can absorb it now. You've got the basics, and now you can say, maybe we can begin to do this a little even better and smarter. And the same thing in terms of at the team level and the individual level. How can you begin to work on those principles 4 and 5 maybe a little more intentionally? And to think about, okay, let's keep prioritizing. How are we communicating effectively? How can we recalibrate that communication and how we're using technology? And just continue to leverage the learning and get that cycle going. And then for individuals, we've now a month into having to not only work, take care of ourselves, but then care for and coordinate with all the people in our lives, including recognizing and continuing to talk about the fact there are 45 million children who are not in school, and then the millions of kids that are not in their daycare, not to mention aging relatives, but also the people we are now coordinating with in our workspaces, the people who are our partners, our roommates, our children who are learning. What does that look like? And we talked a lot about how we talked about how we could level that up as well in week 4, which brought us to week 5. Week 5, where we were is the conversation was quickly pivoting to what's the next stage? How are we going to open up again? And I personally believe the language should be, how are we going to physically open up again? Because I don't think we were closed. But that then begs the question, what is this hybrid combination of remote and on-site and flexible scheduling and flexible teaming? what is that going to look like for our organization right now based upon our unique realities? And so I asked my friend, Ken Freeman, who is just an absolute master in leadership, just action strategies, but also in leadership philosophy and the literature of leadership. He just brings so much wisdom to the table to help us understand what it means to lead in this next phase. And that leader doesn't mean just a CEO. It means leaders at every level, managers, leaders in our teams, each other. And so preparing for what that's going to look like in the next phase. We also talked about the traps to avoid. And this is where I introduced the ecosystem as something to keep in mind as you're moving forward. You don't get stuck in the traps of flexibility that have really derailed organizations over the years, where there was just one focus on remote work, remote work, remote work. Well, really, that's fine for one maybe particular type of job in one particular moment in time right now, where maybe it's not healthy to go into a physical space. But what happens when the realities change and particular jobs are done better in a physical space? What kind of flexibility can keep those people socially distant and manage their exposure to others? And what about the people who maybe can work full-time remote, but ultimately would like to have some presence in the office? What does that look like? So not making all or nothing decisions based on that myopic choice and then myopic focus, but then also avoiding the randomness of implementation, going back to discovery and taking a stock of where the organization is and being really thoughtful in training people now into how to approach how, when, and where they're working, building on the success that's there, aligning your organization, but don't let it be random, because that was a mistake other organizations have made in the past. And finally, in week 5, celebrating what you've done. Wow, 5 weeks into this, there's a lot of challenges, no doubt, but there's a lot that happened, and making sure that you are celebrating what went right and what you did well so that you can build again on that success into the next stage. And then we find ourselves here in week 6. This is the move forward. And what I wanted to leave you with is some advice on taking next steps and action. I interviewed one of my favorite clients. I don't have favorite clients, but I have clients that I just, in particular, truly are inspired by. And this would be one of them. Her name is Liz Moore. She is recently retired as the chief legal counsel for Con Edison. And we were really honored to support her transformation of her legal department over the last few years. And she offers a really deep insight from a senior leader's perspective on what that meant, what that looked like, really trying to offer some guidance and insight to peers of hers who may be at that point where they also want to move forward and reimagine work and take advantage of this moment. When we're going to load that up tomorrow on YouTube and we're going to start to share it. But what was wonderful is Liz did offer to connect with senior leaders who may want to talk to her. And you'll see I have the link to her LinkedIn profile, and she has offered to have senior leaders link into her, and she will arrange an opportunity for them to just talk to her if they have any questions. So I thought that was very generous of Liz. But just her session, my interview with her alone, offers a lot of good insight. And we also talked about the next steps on Tuesday that organizations can take, that leaders can take, managers, teams, and individuals. At the organizational level, I urge you to go back to discovery and readiness building and see where you are. As a leader, really educate yourself about what strategic work flexibility is. Not only is it a business resilience strategy, but there's so much more that you, as Liz says in our interview, which I thought was great, she said, Cali, what happened was I had a whole bucket of problems that I didn't know this solved it. And that once we started doing it, I realized that this is the solution for so many things our organization was trying to achieve. And for managers, it's continuing to build that foundation of shared leadership. For teams, it's continuing that prioritization, communication, and recalibration and leveraging the learning. And for individuals, it's continuing to use all those secrets of the work-life fit naturals. So I also want to stay connected. I don't want to have this be goodbye. you have been signed up for our newsletter, if you are part of this series, which has been great, but you can also forward the link to anybody you think would be interested in getting our periodic updates. Please connect with me on Twitter. Please connect with me on LinkedIn, and always feel like you can email me. I'm happy to answer any questions. So I thought I'd share, before I get to the question segment, I thought I'd share a little personal takeaways from this 6-week series. This is a picture of my cubby area that I was broadcasting from at the beginning of this series. I am now back in my home office. But I had to work the principles in real time. I had to keep it simple. I had to start with where I was, and I had to be about intention and not perfection. I tend to be a perfectionist, and I was so committed to sharing this information with people that I had to get over it. I didn't have great Wi-Fi in this apartment. It was very open to the other part of the living area where my husband and my 2 college-age kids were working and also trying to go to school. And it really forced me to go beyond my comfort zone. And I learned a lot. I learned that, you know what, it's more important sometimes to just get something out there and do the best you can. And I learned how to, in real time, use Zoom as a live broadcast function. And I learned that I love sharing what I do in a new and creative way. So this has got me thinking about possibilities going forward. And I really appreciate all of you continuing to join me each week, even though it wasn't perfect. And sometimes my cubby area, the communication wasn't always the smoothest, but we made it work, and that's all that matters. So thank you very much. So with that, I'm going to open it up. And let's see now. This is going to be one of these real-time experiments where I am going to see if I can.
I'll take care of the mute.
Okay.
We do have a couple of comments in the chat.
Okay. Yep.
So it looks like Elizabeth was saying she falls into number 2. We were effective users for working remotely, but we've definitely started to step up a level.
Okay, great.
So I don't know if Elizabeth wants to add anything to that comment. I'd be happy to unmute you, Elizabeth, if you like. Should I go ahead and unmute Elizabeth? Sure,
Elizabeth, you're unmuted. Don't feel pressure. Like you can, if you would rather not, but we'd love to hear from you.
No, it's fine. I think this is just sort of helped me to, calm things down and think through what we needed to do going forward. And we were already working remotely a few days a week, but we've essentially decided to give up our office for the foreseeable future. So we're thinking about how we do it effectively remotely all the time, but where there might be times when we want to come together as a group. And we're a small group, so that probably makes it a little bit easier. But yeah.
That's great. Good. Well, thank you very much. Do you think that's different sort of 6 weeks in, or were you guys always sort of right from the beginning, like, we got to seriously think about this differently?
I think that we thought that we had to think about it differently, mostly not so much communicating directly with us, but, we're a nonprofit and we work with a very large community, and a lot of that community meeting was face-to-face. So a lot of it was, how do we bring the community together virtually more so? And so there was a lot of rethinking of that stuff.
What'd you do? I'm just curious. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'd be curious. What did you end up doing?
Well, we've basically taken all of the things that we have been doing in person and doing them virtually. So those are meetings in different cities for local communities. Also just we're taking our whole conference to be virtual. So that opens up a whole bunch of things that you have to think about, like, people in different time zones, and how do you really time it properly, and how much time can people spend on something like that in a given day? And I know that our chapters have found that setting up meeting times for the community is completely different when you do them online. Like more people like to meet at lunchtime
Yeah.
than after work. Right.
Interesting. Well, good for you. Bravo for being creative and trying to figure that out. I think that's terrific. Good
Yeah.
luck. Good
Thank
luck. Thank
Thank
you. Thank you. So Lauren, any other questions?
So we have Sarah who said she falls into category 2.
Oh, good. Okay.
There was no additional commentary, but I can go ahead and unmute Sarah if she'd like to comment.
Hey, Sarah. Anything you'd like to say?
Well, I have to confess to being the dinosaur who really learned a great deal during this time. And even though the business that we do is public facing, we've discovered a whole lot of things that we can do in a different and more flexible way. So I even socialized with the team this morning that we need to do a survey to collect all of our thoughts about what we've learned during this time to make sure we don't let this opportunity pass us by.
Oh, bravo. Excellent. Well, thank you, Sarah. Good luck.
Thank you.
Anybody else? You know, I should note, by the way, that when I asked this question at the beginning of the series, most people were in 3, which I thought that was really wonderful at the beginning of the series. I thought most people would be in 1. So that's interesting. I've gotten 2 in 2, which is a good progression.
Well, we have Joanne who's in 3, but she says she has an addendum to that. My organization has been working virtually and flexibly for 20 years now that our external clients are seeing the possibilities and we are adding approaches to adapt to their new ways of working.
Great.
So that's Joanne. Joanne, would you like to comment?
Joanne.
Sure. A lot of my work depends on people gathering and feeding off each other's energy and interacting. So I facilitate and train groups, and we're trying to help clients figure out how to maintain that energy and interaction when you're doing it virtually. It takes different techniques. It's more challenging, but it can be done. So we're experimenting and trying to get our clients to experiment as well.
And I will say, I know who this is, and I'm going to say out loud, if there's anybody who's going to figure that out, it's going to be you, Joanne. I'm going to tell you right now.
Thank you, Cali.
Go, Joanne. Anybody else?
Well, there's one other person who said she falls into category 2, but she's now no longer on the call. So that was the extent of that.
That's fine. That's fine. Well, and I'm going to just say, we're coming to the end of our time. Oh, 12:30 exactly. I'm happy to stay on if there are other questions, but I don't want to keep anybody on that has to go, but I will say this before I let everybody go. Look at this. I got to tell you, we had our rosy moment together over the last 6 weeks. And not only could we do it, we did it. And we're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep reimagining work and life through this crisis and beyond. I don't know about you, I'm having some amazing conversations with people, and this is a really difficult time that takes nothing away from it, but people are beginning to see this could be the beginning of something new and really exciting. So thank you very much for joining me these 6 weeks. Please, let's stay in connection. I don't want to lose that with all of you, but again, I appreciate your time, and any feedback you have for me, I'm open to it. Please let me know. We want to keep giving meaningful, interesting, and helpful information out there. So any other questions, Lauren, before we say goodbye?
Nope. Unless somebody wants to raise their hand or type in something, I think that's it. Yep.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much. Keep reimagining work and life and stay healthy and safe. Take care and thank you.